Welcome back to the deep dive. Today we are taking a pretty radical shortcut into a world where science fiction is basically statecraft.
Right.
We are diving deep into the confidential files on Project Dimension X, the man who is the project, Richard Blade, and the strategic fight he just won.
And it's a fight in a dimension that is, it's literally drowning in rising waters. And it's being targeted for alien conquest.
So our mission for this deep dive is to pull out the critical insights. What does it take to build an invisible empire, to unify a dying world?
It's really an exploration into, the ultimate operational fragility. You're looking at a grand national strategy, this ambition to build an empire that stretches across infinity.
Which is an incredible concept.
It is, but it relies entirely on the biological and psychological resilience of just one person, one single highly stressed individual. The sources we have, they reveal this immense complexity, the harrowing personal cost, and frankly, the surprising military genius it takes just to survive the 25th trip.
Okay, let's unpack that. Let's jump right into the man at the center of this quantum high wire act, Richard Blade. What defines him isn't just his training, which is exceptional, of course. It's his sheer, unique physical makeup.
Exactly. Our sources, they consistently refer to Richard Blade as a man with a, and I'm quoting here, nearly perfect combination of mental and physical qualities.
And that's not just hyperbole, is it? It's a technical requirement.
It's a statement of absolute necessity. Dimensional travel is, well, it's just hostile to human biology and sanity.
And he's the only one.
He is. And that's the terrifying truth for the British government. Blade is the one critical, non-replaceable cog in this whole machine.
Right.
The internal analysis is pretty clear on this. If he lacked even a tiny fraction of that mental or physical perfection, a momentary lapse in concentration, a slightly slower physical recovery, any instability in his neural structure, he would have died a long time ago in some distant, hostile world.
So he is the project.
He is the project. If he fails, the new British Empire it ends instantly.
And Project Dimension X was never a planned strategy, was it? It was a devastating accident. It all goes back to Lord Leighton.
Britain's most original scientific mind, arguably. Leighton's original goal was, well, it was intellectual, not exploratory. He was trying to create an instant genius.
An instant genius? What does that even mean?
Well, the experiment involved linking a powerful master computer directly to a human brain, Blade's brain, to produce a kind of superintelligence, something that could solve any global problem, instantaneously.
But instead of creating a superbrain, he basically short-circuited reality.
That's a good way to put it, yeah. When the energies were linked, Blade didn't just access hyperintelligence, he
Vanished. Gone.
Completely gone, only to reappear later, alive, but severely traumatized. He'd survived some kind of bizarre and violent primitive land. Leighton, to his credit, managed to reverse the process and bring him back, and that's when they realized what they'd stumbled onto.
A method for repeatable interdimensional travel.
Exactly. And the mission just shifted on a dime, from internal intellectual conquest to, well, external physical expansion.
So this accident becomes the foundation for Britain's most radical, most secret grand strategy. Let's talk about the strategy itself, because basing a whole geopolitical plan on one man seems terrifyingly fragile.
It is. It is utterly precarious. But the potential payoff, in their eyes, justifies the risk. The sources, they really articulate this magnificent dream.
The new empire.
The new empire. Project Dimension X might give Britain the ability to draw on resources from Dimension X at will.
Yeah.
Rare minerals, scientific knowledge, tactical advantages, you name it. This could potentially create a new British empire stretching across infinity.
A replacement for the one they lost.
A replacement for the terrestrial empire that crumbled in the 20th century, yes.
That concept, the infinite empire, it would require absolute secrecy. I mean, we're talking about an entire shadow government operation running completely outside of any traditional oversight.
The need for secrecy is paramount. You can't risk this knowledge falling into the hands of your allies, let alone your enemies. The stakes are just too high. And this necessity for classification justifies everything else.
Like the incredible costs.
The incredible monetary costs, the web of lies they have to spin to cover Blade's activities, and, the most chilling part is the inevitable cost in human lives, or sanity.
Which brings us to the psychological price tag. Blade had just finished his 24th trip, and the sources make it very clear that the cumulative trauma had pushed him right past his breaking point. He needed a complete psychological reboot.
The burden is horrifyingly specific. It's one thing to deal with a trail of bodies in the abstract, but there were two individuals in particular who haunted him, who were threatening his mental equilibrium.
Right.
One was Katerina, whose final agonies were relayed to him in these vivid, recurring nightmares. But the most devastating case, the file site, is Galina Haran.
Galina Haran. She survived the physical journey, but at a cost.
A cost arguably worse than death, yeah. The data states that her brain remained physically intact, but she was left with, and this is another quote, no more mind than a 6-month-old baby.
Wow.
She would spend the rest of her life as a helpless idiot.
Wow.
This wasn't just collateral damage. This was a direct consequence of the process itself. It's a risk Blade faces every single time he steps into that machine.
And this raises this huge ethical question, one that the project administrators, they clearly grapple with it, but they ultimately accept it. Is the dream of the infinite empire worth that? Creating these helpless idiots?
For Jay, the project coordinator, and for Lord Leighton, the answer is a ruthless, operational yes. Blade himself knew that the nightmares and the psychological weight were threatening to dull his reflexes, slow his reactions, and eventually they would get him killed on a mission.
And the project can't afford that.
The project cannot afford a grieving or distracted agent. So Blade's solution was to self-medicate, but not with, liquor or women, which he saw as corrosive. He used solitude and physical hardship. He fought that internal battle completely alone. His duty, as he saw it, was singularly to Britain. #Tag2, logistics of interdimensional travel.
So this intense need for a psychological reset, that brings us to his prep for trip number 25. To get rid of those haunting images, he spent 2 weeks, 14 days living rough in the Scottish Highlands.
It was a necessary ritual and a rigorous one. He was traveling constantly, pushing himself to exhaustion in that raw climate.
And he returned different.
He returned physically weary, but mentally hardened. He had successfully wrestled back his capacity to live with his duties and, the consequences of his actions. And this need for solitude for recovery, it was fully understood and even facilitated by Jay.
Jay, the calm coordinator, his perspective seems crucial here. He's the one who sees the whole picture, the systemic cost.
Jay has this fascinatingly cold but rational view of espionage. He has this very well-educated, supremely calm voice, and he acknowledged that every successful secret agent has to eventually come to terms with the steadily lengthening trail of bodies they leave behind.
If you can't, you're done.
If you can't master that psychological burden, you either end up dead or in an institution. Jay had total confidence that Blade would win this personal crisis, which he did in the Highlands. He was operational again.
The operational theater itself is just as unique as Blade. Let's talk about the security. We're talking about a highly secure underground complex right below the Tower of London. Talk about hiding in plain sight.
And the location is a tactical masterpiece, really. They're using history as cover. The official entrance is disguised as an old, disused powder magazine, and the layers of protection are extreme.
Like what?
3-inch thick steel doors, constant electronic monitoring, and this is a Lord Leighton special. The entire building can be flooded with tear gas at the push of a button, a rapid containment measure.
And the interior sounds like a submarine.
It's compartmentalized just like a ship, yes. Sliding steel doors seal off sections every few yards. So the whole structure is designed to contain any breach or attacker. You can seal them off and, as the notes say, dispose of them almost at leisure.
That's where Leighton's somewhat gruesome sense of humor comes in.
It really shines there, yes. You're talking about specialized traps and security devices that operate completely outside of standard military protocols.
Which brings us to the money. An operation this secure, this advanced, it can't rely on public funding.
Absolutely not. Project Convention X avoids regular parliamentary appropriations entirely. Its whole financial structure depends on two very irregular sources.
Okay, what are they?
The Prime Minister's Special Fund, which gives them the essential seed capital, and then critically the sale of goods and knowledge that Blade brings back from his trips.
So Blade isn't just an agent. He's the highest risk, highest value commodity trader for the entire British government. But what exactly is he bringing back?
It varies dramatically. I mean, simple stuff like gold, platinum, or high-value jewels from a dimension, that's easy money, quick cash flow.
But the real value isn't in gold.
No. The real value is in scientific and technological breakthroughs. And that's where the financial pressure really mounts.
Give us an example of this high-cost science.
Okay, take the materials Blade brought back from the dimension they call Englor. He got samples of new alloys and a new chemical fuel. The sources suggest these alloys have properties that could just revolutionize aircraft design.
How so?
Reducing weight while increasing tensile strength dramatically. I mean, a real game changer.
So why isn't that enough to fund the project indefinitely?
Because of the R&D lag. The scientific discovery might be worth £1 million on paper, which is a lot of money. But that is just a fraction of the multi-million-pound R&D cost to take a raw sample of an alloy and turn it into a standardized, usable, mass-producible technology.
So they're always just scraping by.
Constantly. Which makes Blade's next mission, his next retrieval, absolutely critical.
Let's shift to the departure ritual, the human-machine interface. This is where it gets really visceral. Blade enters the computer room, which is dominated by this huge master computer, and it's all overseen by Lord Leighton.
Right, Leighton. The genius in the broken body.
Yeah.
A polio-twisted hunchback, but his mind is... Well, you see it in the technology.
And the preparation for the jump is pretty low-tech.
It is. Blade strips naked, and then he has to meticulously smear himself with this smelly black grease.
And the grease isn't for comfort.
No, it's a literal defense mechanism. It's formulated to guard against catastrophic electrical burns when the dimensional energy pulse hits him. Despite all the advanced theory, the interface is still a raw, violent electrical process.
Then he puts on a loincloth.
A loincloth, yeah. Primarily symbolic, for modesty. He knows he often arrives naked anyway. Then he enters a glass booth with this metal chair.
The chair is described as looking more like it's for an execution than for science.
It does. And the connection process itself is horrifyingly invasive. You have to wonder why such an advanced technology relies on this crude, direct electrical link.
And the sources suggest why.
They imply that it's not a matter of engineering choice. It's a limitation of the dimensional physics itself. The human brain has to be fully integrated, fully overwhelmed to survive the transit. There's no other way.
And Leighton himself hooks him up.
Yes. Despite his physical condition, Leighton moves with a surprising burst of speed and agility. He tapes 116 cobra-headed metal electrodes directly to every part of Blade's body,
116.
linking him irrevocably to the master computer. Blade settles into the chair, just focusing on breathing deeply to manage the tension.
And then Leighton throws the master switch.
And the passage is instantaneous. The room, the men, the booth, they vanish. It's described as a monstrous twisting of the laws of nature. Blade is just hurled across the dimensions, and he's relying entirely on that computer to hold his molecular integrity together until he materializes, wherever that might be.
So Blade's 25th arrival is, as usual, immediately volatile. He materializes in the chair, not in a forest or a field, but on this unstable yellow sand at the base of a towering blue-gray cliff.
The environment just rejects him from the start. The ground starts to shudder, then sway, then heave violently. And then the danger escalates from just, instability to an immediate existential threat.
He hears a rumble.
He hears a faint rumble just as he sees this colossal section of rock peeling off the cliff face right toward him. We're talking house-sized slabs of rock crumbling and dropping directly on top of him.
And he's stuck, right, paralyzed by the process.
Temporarily, yeah. He's locked into the chair by some residual force, and this chilling realization hits him. Dying here would be just as final as any death on Earth.
And that's what gets him moving.
That realization fuels this desperate, brutal effort. He can't stand, so he just violently throws himself sideways 4 times until the chair crashes over. He scrambles maybe 10 feet, just as an office building-sized slab lands precisely where he'd been sitting.
So the first priority is always just surviving the landing.
Always. Just surviving the physical act of arrival.
Once he's free, he's assaulted by the atmosphere. The sources describe the swampy land. The air smells of decaying vegetation, methane, sulfur.
Foul scum. It's a mess. He's surrounded by dark, mud-choked water. And this immediately gives Blade his first major strategic insight.
He becomes an instant environmental forensic scientist.
That's exactly right. He notes the sunsets and sunrises. They're frighteningly beautiful, but totally unnatural. Raw, red-orange, crimson, purple, shimmering green.
And he knows what that means.
Immediately. He attributes the colors to volcanic dust saturating the atmosphere. That confirms massive seismic upheaval.
And he connects the dots. Seismic activity leads to global warming, which melts the ice caps, which causes massive sea level rise. He's looking at the ruins of a civilization that has been literally drowned.
Precisely. And this rapid deduction, it informs his entire strategy from that point on. Survival in this dimension means finding a surviving, stable civilization that has figured out how to adapt to a world that's actively trying to sink them. This is why he survives. He understands the macro threat immediately.
Soon after, he encounters the inhabitants, the Kargoi, the Red People, nomadic warriors on these ox-like
And
drens.
he's immediately confronted by four-armed men. They display considerable military skill, setting up a crescent formation, efficiently scanning the landscape. They're not amateurs.
So Blade's first contact is a masterclass in nonverbal diplomacy.
It really is. He knows that if he appears too proud, they'll kill him. If he appears too meek, he'll be enslaved or just ignored. So he chooses this calculated blend of politeness and absolute immovable confidence.
The aura of a dangerous man.
The aura of a dangerous man, regardless of his current state. He basically projects a message to Pahor, the leader, that says, "You might be able to kill me, you might not. It doesn't matter to me. But you will certainly die whether I do or not."
And it works.
That fixed stare, that poised stance, it results in this silent clash of wills. And Peor, who's described as genuinely wise and highly respected, he sees Blade's courage and mastery instantly. Blade wins his first political victory without shedding a drop of blood, securing protection among the Kargoi.
Let's dig into the Kargoi culture, because their whole society is built around adapting to this flooded world.
Their entire existence is centered on these ox-like drens. The drens are their absolute lifeblood.
They provide everything.
Transport, food, both meat and milk hides for clothing and harness, sinews for thread, bones and horns for tools. Without the drens, the Kargoi they cease to exist.
And their mobile settlements, their wagons sound immense.
They're magnificent self-contained units. These massive, heavily laden wagons are 30 feet long, 10 feet wide. They're self-contained homes for 20 to 30 people each.
And they're camouflaged.
Yes, built for endurance and strength, but all camouflaged with these ugly, blotched patterns of brown and green.
Why camouflage massive wagons in what seems like an empty flood zone?
It speaks to a deep, underlying threat awareness. They're not hiding from natural predators. They're hiding from other people. Or maybe something observing from the sky. They understand the need for tactical invisibility, even if their military is all about traditional archery and swords.
To cement his place, Blade has to pass the Kargoi warrior tests.
The tests were designed to confirm physical prowess and, cultural assimilation. Dren handling was easy for an agent of his caliber. His archery, though, that was something else.
He was good.
Remarkable, especially with a bow made of Dren bone and hide. He repeatedly hit a Dren skull at 150 yards. But the real peak performance was when he shifted his aim to the bare pole holding the skull. He hit the pole 5 out of 6 times while riding at full speed.
That would get their attention.
It instantly secured their admiration. But not universal admiration. This is where we meet the internal threat. Rinhud. Right, Rinhud. He's described as a powerful, bull-like warrior, a leader of a subclan of Bauds. He immediately hates Blade, sees him as a foreign rival who's disrupting the whole hierarchy.
So the final test is a duel, using padded swords, meant to be non-lethal.
Meant to be, yes. But Rihud's pride turns the duel into this vicious act of calculated treachery.
What happens?
The duel lasts a grueling long hour. Rihud's left-handed fights with this furious intensity. But as Blade starts to get the upper hand, Rihud commits the ultimate violation of their rules of honor.
He cheats.
Mid-fight, he uses his short sword to strip the padding off his long sword, turning it into a killing weapon for the final blow. It's pure, murderous intent.
And Blade's response?
Immediate and lethally effective. As Rinhud's naked sword is hissing down inches from his shoulder, Blade drives his own short sword upward in a powerful defensive thrust right into Rihud's groin.
Oof.
It instantly paralyzes Rihud. The fight is over. A swift, definitive victory for Blade.
But Peer isn't just happy about it. He's pragmatic.
He's relieved, but also instantly pragmatic, yeah. He warns Blade that while he's secured his status, leaving Rihud alive and shamed means he's now an even more bitter active enemy within the camp. A danger Blade can never ignore. The political cost of that victory was creating a permanent internal rival. #tag5e. The organized non-human threat. So the transition from internal politics to external organized warfare was swift. After Blade settles in, the Kargoi camp is hit by these night attacks from huge, shadowy batbirds.
And these weren't just random monsters. They were tactically effective. They only attacked in total darkness, caused chaos, and a lot of casualties.
Right, especially because the Kargoi lack any kind of long-range defense. They were all about close-range, individual combat. Swords.
This is where Blade's military mind goes from just assimilating to innovating.
Absolutely. He realizes his sword is useless against flying targets, so in this brilliant piece of field engineering, he improvises a pole weapon. He ties one of the hook's razor-sharp batbird beaks to a tent pole with tendon lashings.
A spear. Why was a simple spear so revolutionary for them?
It shifted the entire paradigm of their defense. Before this, their defense was all based on personal valor and swordsmanship. Individual heroes fighting individual threats. The spear, combined with the pole, immediately allowed a warrior to defend a much larger vertical space and, crucially, to hold a line.
He proved its effectiveness himself.
He personally killed 40 of the creatures with his improvised weapon. He showed the Kargoi the new model of warfare.
Which triggers an immediate informal arms race within the camp.
Yes, the Kargoi are practical and intelligent. They instantly adopt the new weapon, but they improve it. Within a day, the blacksmiths realize that tying sharp metal to the pole makes a far more effective weapon, a proper spear. Within days, hundreds of warriors are armed with spears.
And what's the lesson there?
Rapid adaptation and standardized defense will always trump individual heroism when you're facing a novel systemic threat.
The Batbirds were defeated, but this was just the beginning. The major escalation came quickly.
And it confirmed Blade's suspicion that this environment was being actively manipulated. This was the sea reptile invasion. A mile-wide, organized line of huge 60-foot reptilian beasts surged out of the sea toward the camp.
Organized, that's the key word.
Blade recognized immediately that this was unnatural. Animals do not form rigid, precise lines like guardsmen on parade. Someone or something was controlling them.
The Kargoi, at first they reverted to their old tactics, individual assaults.
And the casualties were horrific. 3 Kargoi maimed or dead for every reptile they killed. Blade had to enforce immediate, radical military discipline using only his voice.
He had to become a field commander instantly.
He vaulted onto the back of a riderless strand and just used his powerful voice to roar instructions across the chaos. He commanded the warriors to abandon individual heroics and form double and triple spear lines, to act as human pikes.
This is a textbook example of the infantry revolution. He's applying thousands of years of human military history to an alien threat.
It is. The medieval pike formation was designed to stop charging cavalry. Here, Blade applies the same geometric principle. Fixed lines, multiple spear points converging on a single target.
And it worked.
Where the lines formed, the reptiles slowed, they hesitated, and they were stopped by dozens of spear points stabbing at their vulnerable eyes and snouts. The disciplined pike formation instantly stabilized the defense and saved the entire camp.
The defense was a success, but Blade had to confirm his control theory without, panicking the Kargoi.
He performed a masterful tactical lie. He claimed it was accustomed to sacrifice the brain of the beasts to earth wisdom, and he asked the warriors to stand back while he butchered the corpses.
But he was really looking for something else.
His true target was the most intact skull. He was looking for any imperfection, and he found it. A small, slightly smoother strip of hide.
And beneath that strip?
The undeniable evidence. A small disc of translucent plastic or glass containing advanced microcircuitry. It was clearly a control device.
So he covers his tracks.
Immediately. He tells Peror the beasts were suffering from an evil growth that makes them mad. And this lie, it achieved 2 things. It maintained the Kargoi's fighting spirit by presenting the enemy as a natural, if diseased, monster. And it kept the secret of the organized, intelligent threat safe until Blade could deal with it himself. #TagV. Concerning the Menel and the Vodi.
So with that knowledge confirmed, Blade realizes the threat isn't the beasts. It's whoever is controlling them. He has to leave the camp.
Right, he can't stay. He fashions a small raft and paddles out alone into the deep water to find the reptile masters.
A high-risk solo recon mission.
Extremely high risk. He travels for miles toward this isolated hill, guided only by a faint, pale, blue-white, non-flickering light. And he's constantly aware of the odds. He's mentally wishing for the kind of tech he has back on Earth, like a simple hand grenade.
When he sneaks ashore, that's when he gets the shocking reveal.
He gets to the Menel reveal, yeah. Confirming they are not just any alien, but an ancient known enemy.
He'd met them before.
The Menel were instantly recognizable from his trip to the Ice Dragon's dimension. They're horrifyingly distinct. 8 or 9 feet tall, they look like giant stalks of asparagus, with 4 double-jointed arms ending in lobster-like claws. They move silently on a rippling suction disc.
And he knows they're intelligent.
Ruthlessly intelligent and technologically superior, yes.
He watches their operation, and it confirms the high level of technology behind the attack.
He witnesses their surgical precision. A Menel surgical team is implanting the control devices into these subdued reptiles using precision lasers and hypodermic syringes that are 4 feet long.
Wow.
They're using advanced surgical techniques to ensure the long-term viability of their biological weapons. So this confirms the attacks were deliberate, organized, and part of a highly advanced military strategy.
But what's really fascinating here is the Menel's arrogance. They have zero security.
This hubris is a common and often fatal flaw for technologically advanced invaders facing what they see as primitive societies. The Menel clearly despised the inhabitants of this dimension. They saw them as hopelessly primitive nomads and fishermen who couldn't possibly pose a threat.
They never expected an attack.
Never. Not from anything as poorly equipped as a naked human warrior with a wooden spear. And that arrogance was Blade's tactical advantage.
So he resolves to attack.
He launches a rapid, devastating assault. He throws his spear with all his strength right into the main control box, instantly silencing the humming. Then he tackles the armed Menel commander and snatches their weapon.
The beamer.
The Menel beamer, a 6-foot black tube. And the power of this thing is immediately apparent.
What does it do?
An accidental discharge hits a tree. This searing crimson beam slices through 3 full-grown trees without any smoke or sparks. Just pure energy transfer.
So Blade quickly masters it.
And systematically destroys everything. The control box, the laser, the wires leading into the water, and finally the Menel submarine, which explodes spectacularly, sinking the entire operation.
And he leaves the surviving Menel to their own creations.
He leaves them to the judgment of their now uncontrolled and very angry reptilian weapons. But the real insight came from a diary that Blade retrieved from the chaos.
And what did it say?
The diary confirmed his earlier deduction about their long-term plan. They were survivors of a devastating crash. Their goal was ingenious, in a way. They planned to use implanted animals to kill or frighten away the primitives, making the area accursed.
So they could set up a safe base.
Exactly. A safe base on the mainland, gather strength, and then conquer the region generations later. Their defeat stemmed entirely from their underestimation of human adaptability.
While he's recovering, Blade meets the local people, the Hauri. And this is where we see this huge cultural gap in threat assessment.
Oh yeah. Fadan, their chief, a fearless sailor and diver, he reveals that the Hauri had known about the Sky People, the Menel, for 2 years.
2 years?
2 years. They saw their machine crash. They saw the Menel vehicle flying over once a month. But they hadn't thought it was important enough to mention.
Blade must have lost his mind.
He nearly lost his temper, yeah. He demanded to know why they hadn't warned the Torians or the Kargoi about these technologically advanced aliens.
And Fudan's response?
It was disarmingly logical from their perspective. He just says, "You never asked me." Plus, the fish were still abundant. The Menel hadn't done anything directly to the Hauri. Their concept of a long-term strategic threat it didn't exist until the sea reptiles became aggressive.
So that discussion leads to the other major threat, the human one.
The Vodi, yes. The Menel diary contained a photo of a large sailing ship with long cylindrical tubes.
Cannon.
This revealed that the Vodi, conquerors from the sea, already had rudimentary gunpowder weapons. Smoke tubes that fired stone and lead balls. Blade instantly realized the Vodi, with their technological edge, were the most immediate pressing danger, not the defeated Menel.
And the Vodi arrived in force.
10,000 men and 200 ships, wearing chainmail and horn helmets. They land near Tordas, the capital of the Torian kingdom, which is led by Queen Kayarna.
And their advantage was siege technology.
Their enormous siege cannons, firing horse-head-sized stone balls, were just battering down the walls of Tordas. The Torians, though fierce, were losing badly, taking 10 casualties for every one Vodi killed. If Tordas fell, the Vodi would roll over the entire mainland. This human threat had to be neutralized first. #TACEI, forging a united human front.
So the strategic situation demands immediate political action. Blade, Par, Fudan, and Loya, they meet to forge an alliance.
And Blade's argument had to be airtight. He had to convince proud nomadic warriors and isolationist fishermen to fight a war for a distant, walled kingdom.
How did he do it?
He presented the logical necessity. If the Vodi conquered the Torians, they would inevitably move against the combined Hauri and Kargoi territory. Worse, the Vodi were warlike and disciplined. If they were left unchecked, they might eventually ally with the Menel.
Creating an unbeatable enemy.
An insurmountable hybrid force, exactly. The logic convinced them. They had to stop the Vodi now and gain the gratitude of the Torians.
So Blade formulates this high-stakes military gamble.
He bets everything on the Vodi's reliance on their most advanced technology. He hypothesized that the Vodi, having traveled so far and spent so much energy besieging Tordas, must have burned through a huge portion of their gunpowder.
Their supplies must be low.
He's counting on it. If they could destroy the Vodi's remaining powder and supplies, the fight would devolve into a clash of courage and steel. A fight the united humans, who were now masters of the pike formation, could win.
This leads to one of the most remarkable tactical plans in this whole deep dive, the night of the stampede.
A coordinated, three-pronged surprise night attack on the Vodi camp outside Tordes. It was a perfect synthesis of their three distinct cultures' strengths.
Okay, break it down for us. Prong one.
First, the Hauri. Fudan and Loya, who are expert sailors, led the Hauri canoes. They used naphtha they found in the forest and fire arrows to destroy the Vodi fleet and supply line anchored offshore.
That eliminates their escape and their resupply.
And their siege cannon reserves.
Exactly.
Prong two.
The traditional infantry attack. The Kargoi pikemen would attack the fortified camp lines, using their newly learned discipline to hold the ground and distract the main Vodi forces.
And the third prong, led by Blade himself, was just pure shock and chaos.
Pure shock and chaos. Blade led 1,000 furious stampeding wagon drens, the largest, most solid animals the Kargoi had. They were hurled into the Vodi camp to create utter chaos, break their lines, collapse tents, and trample men. It was all about maximizing the destructive power of mass panic.
And the night was totally dark. Perfect cover.
Perfect cover. The sounds must have been instantaneous and overwhelming. The heavy, thudding stampede of 1,000 drens hitting the camp, collapsing fortifications, powder flasks exploding from stray fire.
And the fleet was burning offshore.
The Hauri canoes were weaving between the Vodi ships, igniting them with naphtha torches. The chaos just climaxed when the Vodi flagship itself exploded spectacularly after the flames reached its magazine.
A total victory. Total and decisive. The Vodi lost 9 out of 10 men, their entire fleet, all their siege guns and supplies. They were finished as a major threat.
But Blade immediately pivoted. He didn't rest.
No. He knew just defeating the Vodi wasn't enough. He had to replace their technology with their own. So he immediately started teaching the United Peoples how to make their own crude gunpowder, weapons, cannons, and muskets from scratch.
Preparing for the Menel's return.
Exactly. The goal was to ensure that the next time a technologically advanced enemy arrived, they would not be facing spears alone.
But the victory brought a huge political complication that could destabilize the entire alliance. Queen Kayarna.
Kayarna, the fiercely proud and sensual queen of Tor. She was overwhelmed by gratitude and completely taken by Blade's military and leadership charisma.
So she offers him the ultimate prize.
The position of king by marriage. She crowns him with the spectacular pearl crown, a conical white gold frame covered in hundreds of perfect black Hauri pearls.
And Blade understands the necessity of accepting.
He has to. Accepting the crown would solidify the crucial Torian, Kargoi, and Hauri alliance, which they needed to face the Menel long term. But it immediately put Loya, who is now pregnant with his child, in grave danger.
Because of Kayarna's jealousy.
He knew Kayarna was intensely jealous and would tolerate no rivals. So Blade, haunted by the tragedy of Galena Haran and unable to risk Loya's life, had to make a painful, immediate political calculation.
She sent her away.
He engineered Loya's departure, sending her away to the safe sanctuary the Hauri lands for her protection. He knew Kayarna's jealous heart would pursue any perceived threat.
This is a recurring pattern for him, sacrificing personal connection for the mission.
The continuous, necessary sacrifice for the sake of the higher operational duty. It keeps him operational, but it also keeps him constantly isolated. He accepted the crown and the duties of kingship, but not before protecting the one life he cared for most in that dimension. And then the scene just shifts instantly. It demonstrates the ruthlessness of the project's scheduling. Blade is standing with Queen Kayarna in the north tower of the palace, mid-kiss, still wearing the pearl crown.
And he gets pulled back.
The familiar violent pain, the roar like hurricane winds, strikes his head. Lord Leighton's computer has snatched him back to home dimension.
He's pulled out at the absolute peak of this delicate geopolitical consolidation. He must have been furious.
He expressed intense, visible frustration to Jay. He felt he was taken just as the real work was about to begin. Dealing with Loya and their child, consolidating the alliances, truly preparing to meet the Menel on equal footing.
And what was Jay's perspective?
Jay's perspective is the necessary, calm counterpoint. He gently reminds Blade of the project's immutable limitations. If they waited for him to finish everything he started, he'd spend 10 years in each dimension. He'd be useless to the overall infinite empire strategy.
This abrupt departure is really the central, tragic flaw of the whole project. He leaves behind this fragile, new kingdom that's totally dependent on him.
The alliance is immediately tested. Kayarna, while fierce and capable, will struggle to hold the allegiance of the Kargoi and Hauri without Blade's unified leadership.
So what happens?
Well, the Taurians will probably claim Blade was a god who just returned to the sky. But the Kargoi and Hauri leadership, they'll know better. Their newly forged human unity is now under severe internal strain, forced to rely on their new gunpowder weapons and the memory of the night of the stampede to hold things together.
Blade did give a final analysis of the mental strategy before he left.
He did. He realized the Menel weren't fools, just desperate survivors, driven by this immense technological hubris. Their subtle, long-term strategy of making the land accursed with biological weapons. It was a calculated risk.
And their failure.
Their failure was their inability to predict the sheer speed of human adaptation and the political will to unify. They ran into a unified human race, something they never ever expected from primitive people.
He still has hope for that dimension, though.
Oh, yes. He believes that if the human unity he forged can stabilize for a generation or two, building their own technology, it might actually force the Menel to give up the struggle entirely. He even voiced a strong desire to return and approach the Menel as an equal.
A diplomatic goal.
A goal far beyond simple extraction or recon, yes.
But the fundamental operational risk of Project Dimension X remains insurmountable.
Jay confirmed it. Controlled, precise return is still impossible. The dimensional barriers are a monstrous twisting of the laws of nature. Blade might land back in the same dimension, but it could be 25 years in its past or 300 years in its future.
So there's no guarantee he can follow up.
None. The project simply cannot guarantee the precise temporal coordinates.
But there was one final, small, personal victory to offset the frustration of the mission's end.
Jay did reveal some genuinely good news. Scotland Yard had finally closed the file on the mystery hero affair.
Right, the train wreck incident where Blade had to vanish.
Exactly. He had to vanish to protect the project, but that inadvertently put him under police scrutiny. That small, nagging personal complication, which had denied him peace between trips, was now entirely resolved.
It provides a necessary moment of relief. The biggest battles are fought across infinities, but sometimes the deepest relief comes from getting rid of the smallest, most bureaucratic inconvenience. #outro. So what stands out to us looking back at Blade's 25th trip is the profound nature of his true power. It wasn't just physical strength or, survival instinct. It was his incredible ability to rapidly synthesize complex military and sociological data.
He immediately diagnosed a global climate crisis. He understood the necessity of unifying three completely disparate human cultures: nomads, fishermen, kingdom warriors.
And he developed these hybrid military tactics like the human pike lines and the Dren stampede that the alien enemy just never anticipated.
The core insight for you, the learner, is clear. The ultimate defense against a technologically superior enemy isn't just raw strength. It's cunning, it's rapid adaptation, and it's the political will to unite disparate peoples against a common external threat.
Blade's success was achieved by transforming a collection of fleeing survivors into a cohesive, adapting fighting machine. He leveraged the enemy's own arrogance right back at them.
Exactly.
So we'll leave you with the provocative thought posed by Blade himself. Given the accidental, unpredictable nature of his own dimensional journeys, did the Menel reach this dimension via similar interdimensional travel? Maybe a crash caused by the same forces that pulled him there?
Or is the land of the rising waters somehow physically connected? Perhaps an accidental neighbor to the dimension of the ice dragons, where he first encountered them. And this hints at a deep, unexplored architecture of reality. It suggests that the universe might be structured with specific, predictable junctures between dimensions, making certain encounters inevitable.
We leave Blade resting, preparing for his next unpredictable loop into the unknown, armed with fresh knowledge, a clear conscience about his enemies, and the lingering consequences of all the unfinished worlds he leaves behind.
And that's our deep dive for today.
We will see you next time.